Hello, listeners. It's Nicole back again with another episode of Builder's Journey on the Club Pod. In today's episode of Builder's Journey, I spoke with AJ Washington, founder of Phlote, a music venture DAO working with musicians and other artists to succeed in Web3, and with fans to curate and share in the value they create. AJ and I explored his path to Phlote and how he's brought his past experiences and learnings in very traditional worlds into the very non-traditional DAO space, including his thoughts on leadership and accountability. We also discussed the importance of curation in this increasingly abundant creative world and how he is working to disrupt legacy power structures in the music industry. GM AJ, how's it going?
GM, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So here at Builder's Journey, we are looking at people and projects building on the ground, and we have the benefit of getting to speak with a ton of projects that come out of our accelerator. So thank you for sharing your stories today. To get started, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Phlote as well?
Sure. Yeah, my name's AJ Washington. I am the founder of Phlote. Phlote is a community that's focused on music discovery. We're organized as a DAO. We think that music discovery needs to be redesigned, and we think it's the most disruptive thing we can do in music. And we do that by decentralizing curation. I think we'll talk about that a little bit, but we are Black founded, and we think that's an important part of our story as well. Just given the tradition of the music industry and how it's treated Black creators, more than anything, what we espouse to be is a safe space for Black creators to come and learn about Web3 and the advantages of them existing in the space, and to onboard them, and more importantly, onboard the fans behind them who consume their music, because we think that as we've all seen. Web3 and blockchain highly skew rewards to the people who come to it early and who adopt it early. And so we want to use music as a gateway to bridge a whole new generation of, young, underrepresented, people to this technology. So, that's a little bit about us.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. And I'm actually curious, would you be willing to share a little bit about what you were doing before Phlote, or how you
Sure.
came to the idea, where it came from, and why you felt like Web3 was the place to do it?
Sure. So my background is non-traditional for music or entertainment. I don't have that in my background. I'm a graduate of the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. I graduated I graduated in 2001, right before September 11th happened.
Wow.
So spent 5 years as an officer in the Navy. I was a nuclear engineer in the Navy, on board aircraft carriers. So did that for 5 years, got out of the Navy in 2006, went to Wharton Business School to transition to a career in finance. Worked for 11 years on Wall Street for large investment management platforms. First one being Pacific Investment Management Company, PIMCO, and then worked for a private equity firm that also did private debt and had a hedge fund, and then worked for another private equity firm that was focused on energy. My job was always to raise capital for these firms from large institutional investors. So I spent most of my time traveling around the world talking to state pension plans and sovereign wealth funds and foundation endowments, raising capital for and marketing our capabilities at whatever firm I was at. I've always been a big fan of the arts, an avid art collector myself. And at some point, I started visiting studios. Really, when I moved from New York to DC, I've always been a fan of music, and bought a beat machine. And my fiance at the time, asked me what I was going to do with it. And I said, I guess I'm going to make a rap album. I was kind of, tongue in cheek joking, but, like I do with a lot of things, I dove in and actually started going to studios because I was just interested and fascinated by the process of creating. And I wanted to do something more creative. And I think very quickly when I started meeting heads of studios and recording engineers and the artists that were going to these studios, I recognized that, my value add to them wasn't my production or my beats. It was really my business acumen, and that's something that was not in large supply within the creative ecosystem. And so I found myself, really advising a lot of people that I was meeting that were super talented, who I wanted to help, right? And so through that process, uh, I got to look at the music industry, right? And as I was helping these young artists sort of navigate and raise awareness around what they were doing in their work, I was, I got a close look at, what the music industry really looks like, behind the scenes. And, for me and my background as an engineer and trying to look at, the music industry and trying to make sense of it like an engineer would, and then, ultimately like an investor would, it did make sense, right? And I told, a lot of these artists, and my advice to them was, we need to find a better way for you to sell music, right? Because the prevailing business model within music is give your music away for free and sell T-shirts or sell tour tickets or something like that. And any business person understands that that's not sustainable and that doesn't make sense, right? You should be selling your product that you are working to craft. And if you are trying to be the best musician in the world, you should be selling music. It'd be like McDonald's saying we want to make the best hamburgers in the world, and then giving the hamburgers away for free and selling T-shirts instead, right? That's how music works. And so that led me on the journey to find a solution. I had in 2019 quit work, right? So I was 11 years deep on Wall Street. I was making a lot of rich dudes super rich, and just I wasn't learning as much as I had, and so I decided I could use my powers for something better, and took some time off. So my wife and I, we both quit work. We traveled for a year, Japan and Europe and Africa and South America, and just spent some time away from work and thinking about next steps. And we both came to the conclusion very, very quickly that we wanted to be doing something with more impact and something that just aligned with our interest, in a deeper way. And so for me, I had this lingering thought of, how can I help these artists? And, I was still talking to them and still trying to help them, any way I could, even as I was traveling. And at some point, I guess it was like late 2019, I reconnected with a classmate of mine from Wharton who had left Wharton, gone to McKinsey, worked for McKinsey for 5 years, then gone to SAP in Silicon Valley, and then ultimately went to Salesforce to help them build blockchain product. And in catching up with him, he gave me a whole new insight on blockchain and the technology that I didn't have before. And I immediately said, "This is it. This is the thing that that can help an artist of any size build a sustainable business for themselves, and allow them to package and sell their music as content." And that was the genesis of Phlote, right? And this was late 2019, early 2020. So we've always been hyper focused on music. We've always been hyper focused on bringing independent artists to music, and serving independent artists, and from an early stage, very, very focused on curation, right? Because we feel that curation in an era of abundance, especially around digital content, is supremely important. And that type of platform is really the type of platform that can do the most to benefit an independent artist that needs to sort of elevate above the noise and connect them with a fan or collector base that is seeking to find them.
There's so many threads in there that I want to get into. So I'm glad that we have some time. Yeah, so that's fascinating. And I think I knew a little bit of the story, but not the entire one. I'm glad you got your travel in 2019. Good timing.
Yes.
Such good foresight.
Oh my God. We think about that all the time.
I'm sure you draw on those memories a lot. So, before we get into perhaps what's the, sort of sexier, fun part of music and curation and discoverability, I want to talk about something that I think people are seeing a lot of and wondering a lot about, which is these transferable skills and how we bring these mindsets into Web3. And I think that there's this interesting tension within Web3 where, you know, there's WAGMI and there's vibes and,
Mhm.
you know, all of these mindsets. And at the same time, we have to get stuff done. It's a time of rapid building. It's a time
Right.
of rapid opportunity and,
Right.
you know, fast but thoughtful does seem like it's winning. And so my question is, how do you personally think about what from your past experience of some very traditional worlds do you bring in? What
Right.
feels transferable and what are you having to consciously leave behind?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think a couple things. I think what I brought is the ability to learn, right? And that's something that has always guided my past career choices. Like my decision to go into the nuclear navy was to learn something that not a lot of people knew, right? My choice to go into fixed income and the bond markets out of Wharton, when most of my classmates were going to banking or going consulting, or if they were invested in or interested in investment management, they were going to equity shops. My interest in fixed income was even this is a discrete sector of the market that not a lot of people understand, but I want to know, right? My switching from large firm to smaller firm was all based on what I wanted to learn, right? And the reason why I left ultimately was because I wasn't learning, right? So that is, I think for me, I'm just a curious person, right? And I think this space that we're in is like a playground for me and people like me because there's so much to learn. There's so many things that are moving at such a quick pace that there if you find yourself bored in Web3, I don't I don't actually know how that's possible. So I think that's the first thing is like I'm just a very curious person and wanted to to learn this, and I could see it as the future, and I think for me, and I've said this a lot in the last couple of weeks, I don't think there's a place where I would want to spend my professional time more than Web3, right? I think this is the best use of my professional time is 100% focused on this space. I think the other things that I brought, from my past, um, are just the ability to connect, right? I think, in my role as a salesperson on Wall Street, I was really just connecting with people, right? Many of the relationships that I had, I still have, because we weren't, I wasn't building really relationships for the firm. I was building relationships in a very organic, genuine way, and I knew that ultimately that was the path to success for me. And I have always sort of, been the type of person, especially professionally, who has always tried to deliver value. So whether that was something my firm could do or something that was outside of the capacity of what our capability was, I wanted to provide the best advice and the best information to my clients that I could. And I think that focus on delivering value is something that's supremely transferable to any walk of life, but something that is a huge benefit in Web3 because I think that's how it works best. What did I leave behind? I think generally this this mindset around um, I don't know, like I don't know if I ever had it, but I think I've definitely leaned the other way now, going forward into this idea of sort of like what's in it for me. I think this sort of selfish mentality where it's like me first versus you is something that I just it doesn't. I think if it just it shortens the lifespan of any opportunity. I think in Web3, and I think ultimately, the things that'll go the farthest are the things that sort of flip that in reverse. And then also just business models, right? I think that's the other thing. A lot of things are getting inverted now, right? Where, so, if you think about where I came from, it was about, centralized financial backer having sort of control of profits and siphoning profits from the user base, right? And I think obviously, the world of Web3 in its best format works the opposite way, where the community is supporting and funding the project. The project is blessing the community with benefits and surprises and and capital. So I think there, as you go deeper into the rabbit hole of crypto and blockchain and Web3, I think there are a lot of fundamental things that you sort of have to shed and reestablish, because I think the way this technology works best requires that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially with where we're at right now, we can't get anywhere without each other. The
Right.
tools, the advice, the new shifts in thinking, we
Right.
desperately need each other.
There's one more thing as well that is just came to mind, and it goes back to something that you alluded to in your opening remarks, and I think that is this like focus on scaling, right, and hyper scaling and going fast. Although this is a very dynamic industry, that's probably an understatement. I actually think there's some benefit in going slow, and growing slowly and intentionally. And I think it's really mainly focused on the ability to seed culture in the right way, right? I think it's scale is the opposition of an established, ingrained, highly intentional seeded culture. And the more I'm in this space, the more I think that smaller may be better in some ways. So this is something that is sort of a newer, so newer in our line of thinking and how we grow Float. But certainly over the past 3-4 months, we've been maybe contracting more than trying to expand, just to make sure that we have the right foundation set from a people perspective.
Yeah, I think that tension and push pull is so interesting. I think a lot of communities are going through it, where all of a sudden you reach a certain point of momentum and people are really taking notice and it feels wonderful. And then there's also this oh shit moment of, okay, how are we onboarding this many people, or how are we putting this many people to work thoughtfully and intentionally? And I think
Right.
that, and I'm curious on your thoughts here, there's also this really interesting tension with control. And I think, this started as your idea,
Right.
right? It started as something
Hmm.
that grew out of both professional experience, but also personal interests. And then this obviously aha within the music industry. And so I have a couple of, I guess, pieces of this question. One is around, just generally how do you deal with control? But then
Right.
also in looking at that with your leadership style and as you've been expanding out into a DAO, what does control and vision and road mapping look like? And how do you hold your, growing community accountable for that while also leaving
Right.
space for somebody else to have a vision? Yeah, what does
Right.
control and accountability look like?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think it really starts with values, and having a fundamental value set and philosophy that allows anyone to make decisions within that philosophy. So it's almost like philosophical guidelines. And as long as we have those and everyone understands what those are, I think it helps us make decisions quickly, right? Just like philosophy is like an operating system, right? It helps us make decisions quickly and make the right decisions that are in line with our mission and our objectives and how we want to be growing. One of our main rules is only good energy allowed, right? And so we think that the opportunity here for us all is to build amazing things with people we like, right? And if you're not doing that, then I don't think you're doing it right. The first gating principle, whenever we meet someone, no matter how talented the artist, no matter how talented the person is, do we like them? Are they good energy? Are they positive? Are they like us, right? And if that's the case, then great. If not, then that's fine too. It just is. It's not a great fit. So we want to find, sort of a people fit. And then, if we know that if we have enough good people in the room, we can kind of stand out of the way. We don't have to do much, right? We sort of give people some direction and say, this is what we're hoping to achieve. And we give guidelines and then allow people to create within that. I like to equate it to like a coloring book, right? We give you the outline and allow you to do whatever within that you want, right? And yeah, some people might color outside the lines, and that's okay too. But at least they're not going to be 180 degrees in moving in the opposite direction that we want to be heading if we set up this foundation the right way. I think on top of the value set and the principles and the philosophy are the incentives, right? So the incentive structures have to align with the value set and the principles. And those two things, once they are done and widely known, right, which I think is the goal and the objective of our DAO and probably a lot of DAOs, then I think, we feel comfortable releasing people into the system and saying, create, let us see what you can do with these tools. Let us see what you can do within these guidelines. Let's see what how you color this picture different than I would have, but still within, with the same foundational principles in mind.
And so I'm curious as you've been growing, and I would love to get into maybe some specific instances. What has some of this looked like? Especially, I was poking around the Discord and your Twitter and whatnot, and it looks like you're starting to experiment with proposals and with voting and some governance. So can you share some specific examples of what this evolution has looked like and maybe where you're at now, but also some of those initial steps?
Yeah, sure. So we, again, decentralized curation is really the name of the game for us, and what that means is, let's take curation out of the hands of a small number of people and put it in, a broad community, and see what they like. So again, like this is a part of us, even me and the core team here, allowing others to have a say in what gets not only brought to the platform, but what gets distributed off of it, right? I think eventually what you'll see from us is we're going to start to look like a media channel, right? That is curating content, both music and other types. And so our whole focus is on decentralizing to people who we trust, who are bringing good things to us that the community likes, and we've been experimenting with that for 6 or 7 months now. And so what does that look like? So for us, like music is a very easy thing to decide on, right? If you think about a DAO having a billion decisions to make and governance and all that, like we've tried to simplify it down, understanding again that a lot of our community is built of DJs and producers and artists who don't know what Snapshot is. They don't care, to be honest. And we want to abstract a lot of that, the technical stuff away from them and make things very, very easy. And so if you think about what an easy sort of governance structure could look like for music, it would be governing a playlist, right? And so we allow, anyone in the community to submit music to us, to the community, and we set up a voting, sort of like product hunt for music is how you could think about it, where on a weekly basis we allow the community to vote for the songs that they like the best. The top seven we take off, and then sort of we were putting them out and minting them as NFTs, one a day, right? Just as a mark of our curation. And so that's what it looks like for us. At a very elemental step is this music cool or not, right? Do you like it or not? Does this belong on the playlist or does it not? And getting people in the practice of performing those reps is a very easy way to sort of step them into the decisions that we'll have to make down the line about direction and the heavier topics.
And so, yeah, let's talk about curation a little bit. I think that we can look at decades, if not, centuries of Black culture being the place where, I think Black communities being the place where culture was workshopped for our country at large. And, this has
Right,
happened time and time again. And then we see white artists come in and basically scoop that up, commercialize it, et cetera, rinse
right,
and repeat. And it's sort of the tragedy of American music in
right,
general. I mean, financially, clearly, American music has benefited from it, but, when we look financially at the artists, it's a pattern that we've seen repeated ad
right.
nauseum. And so, I think that you are sort of chipping at this very specific piece around decentralizing curation and discoverability. I guess I'm curious what you see as a next step. And I think that this also
Mhm.
ties into that sort of WAGMI where we all need each other because obviously, no single DAO is going to break it down or fix it on its own. So, beyond the curation and the playlists, what are some of the next steps that you're thinking about?
Yeah, so there's kind of three things that we're thinking, and that's a great question, and exactly how we think about this. First, we agree wholeheartedly that there's no way that it's not float by itself. It's float plus water music plus refraction plus you know tiny mixtapes plus et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, banding together and forming a formidable force that is now providing an alternative network to the establishment, right? And so we think that is these sort of DAO to DAO um, integrations, right, and collaborations are going to be supremely important, and each one of us doing something specific. So Float is curating, right? We are focused on decentralized curation. What we need. So the amplification layer is important because it's not just about finding amazing artists, about getting them widely known and building community for them and building followership and ultimately buyers and collectors, right? So the amplification layer is important, and so that can come in a lot of different forms. That could come, in the form of a DJ network, right? Who are the consummate tastemakers in music. That could come in the form of a lot of different types of editorial, right? That could be used to amplify the artists that we're finding. That could come in the form of media channels that are specifically tied to, elevating emerging artists, right? So if you think about, ultimately what the right combination is for us, it's this sort of curatorial layer plus, editorial on top. So think about like, if we had a curated MTV, right? That would be, that's an interesting idea, but that is, these parts of a greater system that allows, these artists that we're finding to be able to build. And so we think that this we're not going to be able to do everything, right? And so we're actively looking for partners who are doing these other pieces that we can collaborate with and combine with and learn from and work with to collectively reach I think the objectives that we're all here for, right? I think the Web3 music community is growing. There's a lot of intelligence coming into the space, and part of the reason we're very 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 happy to be a part of C Club is to be at, I think, the genesis of a lot of these new communities that are coming in and trying to revolutionize the traditional music industry and be able to work with them and know them, right? So for the next steps for us, it's obviously continuing to progress along our path of decentralizing curation and that practice. But there's a couple other things that we're very focused on for this year. One is establishing a digital presence. We've been working on a website behind the scenes that has some interesting capability and ultimately will act as an operating system and OS for our community. So that we're very very excited to get an early version of that up ASAP and just be iterating that in public. The second part is a physical space, and so we will be flying down to Atlanta next week to look at a few spaces that would serve as the physical headquarters for Phlote. It would be run by one of our members who is a well-established artist in Atlanta, has been there for a long number of years, he has a Rolodex that is unparalleled and a lot of respect within the community. His name's Ron Fortune. He would be the CEO of this public space, or this physical space, and he would be the curator of it too. And we'd use that space not only as a gallery but also as a place to incubate art and incubate up and coming artists. So that's high on the agenda. And then the third is, we've been thinking a lot about capital structure and how we put capital into our business, and have been looking at a couple of different ways to do it. As you know, token sales is one, NFT sales is another, but we like the idea of a fund. We think a fund legitimizes us in a way that is much more clear to understand than if we market ourselves as a DAO or market ourselves even as a startup, because there's this sort of connotation that if you're a fund you have money, and we want that to be the case, and we also want that fund structure to have some Web3 elements. And so we've been actively thinking about what does a GP-LP relationship look like in Web3. How can we, how can I take some of the elements that I know from my past and bring them into the space and do it in a more equitable way? And ultimately, how can we raise capital in a focused way that allows us to be very nimble and start to use that capital to build this network, right? That we talked about, where it is us aligning with people of like minds, investing in them, doing some sort of token swap with them, or creating this distributed network of DAOs, enough people, enough teams that are all now aligned economically and are moving in the same direction.
So interesting. So many more topics I want to ask about. Well, going back to there's one piece I want to ask first before we move into learning more about this physical space and the website. So thinking about these curators, the DJs, the people who are on the digital ground, discovering the music, listening to it, taste making, curating, they're very much the same as the people that were discovering and putting together the early building blocks of hip hop and reggae and dance hall. And, it's just, we're in the metaverse now, we're in Web3. And so I'm curious, and, again, we know that a lot of those people didn't capture the value of these movements that went on to make other people millions. What are the ways, and I understand this is a difficult question to answer because I think we're still at the very early days, and I don't know that any of us know where we're going to end up, but I think we're trying to put together the building blocks in the right way so that we end up where we want to be. But I'm curious if you're able to share a little bit about how you're thinking about the community financially, for lack of a better way of talking about it, as far as how you start building that out. And are there any parts of that you can share?
Yeah, so we want to create an incentive system that rewards sharing, right? When you think about music discovery and the people who are on the sort of the forefront of that, like the bloggers, the playlisters, the music lovers who just really like finding new music. The one thing that we all really love to do more than anything is introduce you to something that you love and convert you into a fan, right? And to sort of get that feeling that comes from that, and that's something that's innate in the community that we've built. These are people that will dig in, through SoundCloud or Spotify and find new acts that they don't think anyone else knows about, and share them, and hope to get some sort of response, right? And I think that is something that people would do for free, for sure. And then if you add an incentive layer on top of that that rewards that, I think it just enhances enhances, that feeling. Um, what we love about Web3, and really just the world that we're heading to, not, take crypto away from this, and let's just think about, um, the world of creativity, right? And the ability for anyone to sort of create very cheaply using inexpensive software, whether that's music or writing or art, right? There are all these, the world is only becoming more creative, and I think now that there's a monetization link, it's going to be hyper creative. I'm excited to see where the next 20 years goes and what the world looks like relative to today. I think it's going to be completely different, to be honest with you. And I think a lot more people are going to have careers that are creative, because now there's a way to actually make money, from doing that, right? And in that environment, there is going to be a tremendous amount of content that is going to be made. And if you think about, decentralization, right, as a theme, decentralized creation is great for the creator, but not really for the consumer, right? Because now, instead of you going to ABC, NBC, CBS, and ESPN and Time and Newsweek and whatever, these small number of sources, you have an infinite number of places that you need to look to find the best things, right? So curation as a theme is, I think, going to be very valuable and is going to become an art form in and of itself, right? So, so we like the idea of allowing people to not only share, but to be able to invest in those shares, right? So uh, if I find an artist that I like, I can buy their tokens and support them, right? And sort of get aligned with them, and then share them with you, and then share them with others. And not only am I sharing good music with you, but in a way, I'm also sharing investment opportunity, right? I'm sharing this, like, hey, here's an artist that I found who has these tokens, and yeah, you can go buy them too. And if you like, if you like the music, this is a smart way to, I hate to say the word invest, but invest your time and attention, right? Not necessarily invest in the traditional way. Um, and so we like that system, and we're building that system, right? And that's how we think about the ability for curators to step in and get value, right, that they have traditionally delivered to the music industry, without getting sort of the rewards. And it's a way for us also to allow, creators to get highlighted and to get spotlighted in a way that allows them, to have a higher probability of success, elevating above, a lot of the noise that we think is going to come from, the abundance of content that's going to be made over the next however many years, decades.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, so I love the combination too between the IRL space in Atlanta and starting to invest in that presence there. I think that one of the interesting things right now with NFTs generally and with music NFTs as well, is this transition now into the hype cycle, where you could just make anything an NFT and it would immediately sell. That portion of the building has passed. And I think that we're getting into the, perhaps the real part of the building, the real part of the hard work. And so I'm curious, and looking at that space in Atlanta and looking at this sort of collision between NFTs and digital and then real world. What do you see the work there looking like? What do you see are the first steps in starting to integrate with people making music and forming culture IRL, and then bringing it into the metaversal or NFT Web3 space?
Yeah.
What are some first actions once you have that physical space?
Yeah, so we've had physical events. We had one last week that taught us a lot in terms of live activations, and we think that, again, not the world's not in Web3 yet, and so we need to go into the world and, like, bring them here. And recording artists are a special case, right? Because they have communities of fans who are already consuming their content, and they have fans that'll show up in person live, right? And so we think that the physical space and the physical, especially for music, Physical events are always going to be superior to digital events, period. Right? You're never gonna. I don't think in our lifetime. Maybe we'll see. And this is a hot take, but I don't think that I will ever prefer a digital music experience to a live music experience. I just can't see it. I hope I'm wrong, but right now that's not the case. And so I think for music, you have to be physical if you really want to deliver like the best experience to the fan base, right? We're not in a place where a lot of music fans are ready to dive deep into the metaverse and have that digital experience. And so the physical space is very important for us and a key part of our onboarding. So what we did just this last week in New York City was we did a live NFT drop with a group called Future Legend. It's made up of two artists, Rocky Snyder and Jay Prob, one from Brooklyn, other one from Bronx. They released a music video on Glass called Bronxland and did a live drop in New York at a space called OSNYC, and it was amazing. So what we did was, we sent around an RSVP. That RSVP sign up asked if the person that was going to RSVP had an Ethereum wallet or not. If they didn't, we gave them a link to download the Ethereum wallet. If they did, we got the ETH address, right? And so we could clearly see we had 180 people RSVP. We had 60-ish wallets that we got, and then we were able to even live help people download ETH wallets and then be able to bid on this NFT. And so for now, Rocky and Jay, they have 180 people who are interested in Web3 and crypto and are interested in supporting them. And it's a way you can start to grow community that way, right? And so the live space is important. I think Atlanta is going to be just a continuation of that, where we are. I think what the Atlanta clubhouse will become is it's going to be token gated, right? You need to have an NFT membership to sort of be an active member there. We want to create maybe one of the first totally on-chain clubs, like from a revenue perspective, that exists, right? And I think on-chain revenue and on-chain anything is going to be supremely important. One of the benefits of of blockchain, the technology, is this ledger, right? That makes the health of a business very transparent, and I think a lot of us are underestimating the power of that. But as we think about our business, we're trying to increase the level of transparency across all that we do, not only the transactions, but we think transparent business models are going to be more trusted, and I think that's where we're all going. And so we're just trying to get there as quickly as possible. But especially when we think about the physical spaces, the clubhouse in Atlanta, the groups that we're bringing into this, we are setting them up to have a very material business that is verifiably on chain, as a significant competitive advantage for them.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We talk a lot about onboarding, and usually that has to do with Discord and wallets. Right. And it's like, okay, how can we onboard? How can we get our community right from the introduction to the start here to the right discussion? And I love the physical space as onboarding, and I think that hopefully as we return to public life increasingly, I think we're going to see a lot more physical onboarding into Web3, and I love that model. I love the example that you shared. I have one final question, and you have worked in finance. You're familiar with markets. And, I'm curious, as you think about longevity and sustainability and building on chain, as you described, what are some of the things that you're thinking of, as markets shift, as vibes and opportunities and energy, I think, goes from hype into reality? How are you thinking about the philosophy and the building culture, not only for yourself but also for your community, to build sustainably and for the long term over the next few years?
Yeah, got you. So I think it's going to come down to, let me start here. I'd say this, especially within music, um, there's this question of valuation, right? Like, what is something worth? And in music, especially for a recording artist, that's been a hard question to answer, but people have tried to come up with models, right? Let's look at number of followers. Let's look at engagement of those followers. Let's look at the number of streams, the number of active listeners, whatever, and trying to make an assumption on what that means from a revenue perspective. And there's all kinds of ways to manipulate those numbers and make those look maybe different than reality. And as a result, it's very hard to come to a number, right? In my background in finance, especially in bonds, right, there is math that backs revenues coming in. You can discount that. You can come up with a very specific number based on hard objective metrics, right? And in music, especially around artists, there are no hard metrics, but that is that's where we're headed, right? And so we're very interested in just stats, right? So and metrics and hard metrics. And so what are those metrics, and how do we optimize those? I think those metrics are number of token holders. Those metrics are really all the information that you can find on Etherscan, right? Just as a as a summary, and we want to be able to exhibit that information in a highly digestible way, not only for the artist but for anyone around us in our community. So that there's no question of the impact that we're having and what we're doing, right? And we have the stats to back it up, and those stats don't lie, right? So we think, again, like the more transparent we can be around that, that's going to add a lot of leverage in terms of the type of capital that we can raise, not only for ourselves but our artists, and anyone else who sort of follows this sort of line of thinking and business practice going forward. I think there's no downside to this level of transparency. And again, for the music industry, that has been traditionally very opaque and confusing, and gatekeepery, and walled gardens of information, and the opposite of everything that blockchain represents. This is transformative, right? And I think ultimately it will just allow people just to relax into creating if you're an artist, right? But also just relax into being confident that us or others like us are doing what we say we're doing, and will be highly valued because of it. So that's hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I think transparency, sort of after the initial excitement, is incredibly important, because the reality of what's being built ultimately is what's going to sustain. So,
Right.
well, thank you so much. This conversation was fascinating. I would love to touch base again after you've landed in Atlanta and started opening that up once the site is live. I'm looking forward to seeing all of that. Before we leave, where can we find you, and where can we get some more information about what you're up to?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to follow us is at Team Phlote, TEAMPHLOTE. Right now, the site will be up hopefully in the next 2 months. So don't hold me to that, but yeah, we're trying to get it up as soon as possible, and that will be float.xyz, phlote.xyz. We have a blog on Mir. Every day I'm writing a synopsis of our day. It's called Float Business Day.
Amazing.
Yeah. So again, just another interpretation of this sort of transparent business model. We just want to be able to show the work, and we think the work that we're doing is important. So just for us to be able to document, we think is very important. So that probably is the best way to know who we are and what we're doing. And yeah, those are I think say those are the best places to follow along.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It was great to talk.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.